And you know what time it is? That's right, we're coming to the end of the month and we haven't done this yet, so we need to do our Decades of Dwarfs. And I'm going to start this time, I'm going to start with the more recent one, because we always dedicate a lot of time and effort to the older one, and I want to dedicate a bit more time to this one and not feel rushed. So let's, without further more ado, if I say that properly, without further more ado, let's dive into 1995's edition of White Dwarf. Okay, here we are. Where are we? May 1995. White Dwarf issue 185 here. On the cover, Smurf Marines, of course. On the inside page, Blood Axe Commandos versus Mordian Iron Guard. So we saw recently the Imperial Guard getting their various regiments. I don't think we've actually covered Mordian Iron Guard yet, so maybe that's to come. High Elves and Skaven down the bottom here. We are currently looking to recruit heavy metal painters. It's exciting. And a production editor proofreader. Dragon Princes of Calador coming out. It's interesting. Painted one last month. There you go. This was the month they've come out. Free next issue. Looking forward to a free Plastic Wizard next issue. I wonder if there'll still be one on the cover when I come to it next month. And some books. Some books. Although I say that, Harlequin is here, and I remember reading Harlequin as a kid and thinking it was great, but then maybe if I'd read these others as a kid I'd have thought they were great as well. Not a big fan of Warhammer fiction, tends to be quite poorly written, but I guess that's what you'd expect. Oh yes, look here, in this month's releases, the Mordian Iron Guard Lieutenant. There you go. So maybe the Mordian Iron Guard are coming soon. The Whirlwind, some more plastic bits of accessory to fit onto the Rhino kit, because if you've already got a tank kit, why not make it a flexible tank kit? Makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. Rules for using the Whirlwind. Lord Macragge, Master of the Ultra Smurfs. And now it starts getting good. Now we're into Warhammer 4th edition. This is another tactics article. We looked at one a couple of months ago. This is one looking at the principle of the castle. I think it rather overstates itself, but there you go. This diagram tells you basically everything you need to know. Artillery, infantry, cavalry. Premises, you have a hard, immobile centre that hits stuff. An inner ring, your wall, which is designed to withstand the assault, which by now is lesser because you bombarded them with your artillery, clearly. And then on the outside you've got some cavalry units who can be used to outflank and to generally harass the enemy as they're coming in. It makes for an attractive looking photograph for sure. And look at the beauty of that. Look at the beauty of the 4th edition laid out there with this little cardboard buildings and its cardboard griffin and chariots. And yeah, it's exciting, it's cool. It excited me as a kid anyway, with all these bright colours. Yes, I'm sure there's some sound tactical advice there, but as with everything Warhammer, it all comes down to the dice roll, doesn't it? So if your dice rolling is poor, this all falls apart regardless. There you go. Epic. Cool looking Warlord Titan. The categories for Golden Demon 95, I think we've already seen those in the previous one, but definitely bears looking at those entries again. Ostrogoth, the High Prince of Hachette, alongside Krell and the Skaven Warpfire Thrower. Interesting figure. So this is the first time reading this, was the first time that I've come across the lore for Ostrogoth, besides seeing him and thinking that's a really cool model. It actually took me a really long time to realise that he's got feet poking out under his beard here, because obviously I didn't have this model, so I've only got access to the photographs, and it just looks like he's got bigger mechanical legs and big mechanical arms, and you go, oh well, he's a Chaos Dwarf engineer sorcerer, so he's just made himself bigger legs so that he can go stomping across the battlefield. Though the lore is actually, if you're unfamiliar with it, the lore is that as Chaos Dwarf sorcerers grow extremely old, the fickle powers of chaos that they meddle with start turning their body to stone, starting with the feet. So he's actually in this engine so that he can continue to move around and function despite his body slowly petrifying. Apparently he can survive even when his body is petrified up to the neck, because he can still talk and issue commands and weave spells with his head. Which is interesting, because you would have thought after his organs had completely petrified that would be it. But obviously the power of chaos residing in the statue keeps him going until his head is completely solid. What happens then? Does his brain continue to function? He just continues in all eternity staring out of stone eyes at the world? It's a bit frightening, isn't it? Anyway, Astrogoth, the High Prince of Hashut, one of the few Chaos Dwarf articles to appear in White Dwarf. I'm not quite sure why they never got such a big release. Maybe they were not universally popular. I can imagine that being the case. We're looking at the Talon Desert Riders here. Not the Mordian Iron Guard, but the Talon Desert Riders are this month's Imperial Guard regiment of choice. It's apt because the new Dune trailer has just launched, so I'm looking at these and going, oh yeah, very Dune, like it. And hooray, Warhammer Quest articles. This is a cool one. This is Mission Impossible. This is special missions, so rather than just the ones that are in the quest book, if you suddenly come across the opportunity to do a special quest, and that might infiltrate, and it gets shuffled into the deck. You know, you've got cards here, they get shuffled into the deck, and suddenly you can be halfway through a regular quest and suddenly there's a special side quest. And this one, these all revolve around this Gale Jail tile here, another beautifully rendered floor tile, and 3 different side quests that involve the use of that. So, as always, these articles pretty exciting. Do love a bit of Warhammer Quest. Some really beautiful painting on not Space Smurfs but Space Wolves here, by a member of the Heavy Metal team, Kim Seiberg. Are you still around? Are you still painting? Let me know. It'd be nice to see what you're doing now, because these are absolutely beautiful. Super duper highlighty. It's one of the things that I've realised recently, that I don't build to high enough highlights on a lot of my models, and when I come to doing a few sci-fi pieces, which I've got when I finish my fantasy armies, I've got a few sci-fi bits that I want to do. I think that's going to be really important, building to this crisp white sharp highlight on the edge. And the return of a modelling workshop. Card buildings, card Warhammer buildings. I remember fondly turning boxes and boxes of cereal into Warhammer buildings as a kid. And what's really nice to see is that you've got a little bit there, but then particularly when we get to here, it's the old Townscapes buildings. Nice drawings of those resurfacing. Here are some ideas from what you can make with simple card templates. Nice to see those buildings turning up again. And curiously, no battle report in this issue. I had to go back and double check in the contents when I read this through, but there is no battle report in this issue. It's all pure content. So maybe they didn't have new things they wanted to sell to you. Maybe the extra space that the Warhammer Quest took up meant that they were limited to the size of the magazine. Or maybe they just didn't have time to fight one and write it up. But I don't know, there isn't one in this issue. Not that I particularly miss it. There's plenty of nice photos elsewhere. And the articles are interesting. So there we go, we've done, I'm not sure we spent much more time on that actually. I think that's about as much time as I used to spend as a kid, and sort of flick through. Occasionally you'd read an article that was of interest, but it was mostly flicking through and looking at the pictures. They're nice pictures, nice glossy, shiny, colourful things. Anyway, there we go, that's May 1995. Let's have a look at May 1985. This cover is a little bit worn. This is sort of flapping off. Chris Achilleos cover. This one, I remember this guy mostly from the Hero Quest rulebook. He makes an appearance in black and white. don't think I saw the coloured version until it appeared in the 3rd edition Warhammer rulebook. There you go, and I think it's called Knight of Chaos or something is the name of it. And on the back cover, here he is again with the head of the goblin-y creature that he's defeating, resting on his leg removed, and people saying, hey look, it's one of the new Fighting Fantasy plastic models from the Citadel. The fantasy, the figure, the finish. I feel like they could probably come up with a better strapline than that. Yes, these 54mm plastic figures. This is definitely one of the better ones. A lot of these were absolutely awful. But painted up, this one doesn't look too bad. I'm intrigued because obviously it's got a choice of heads. That's the same head, but it's different colour plastic, so it must fit differently. The shield is different. The weapon is different, I guess, from the black plastic here. That this is different accessories that you can put on it. So they must have been quite involved kits at the time, but it doesn't seem like they really took off. And judging by the quality of some of the other figures, which are appalling, I'm not entirely surprised that they didn't. But that one is quite nice. So here we are, we're going in now. In Livingston telling us that the mainstream RPG fantasy gaming market in the States is in trouble, but it's okay because that's only the mainstream. On the sidelines it's still doing fine. Good to know. Here's another one of these horrible page layouts. I'm not sure how you can read any of this. I mean, it looks, you can see on screen this massive bold graphic, and just deciphering the text in amongst this is awful. This is NPCs for superhero games. Open box reviewing a bunch of Sci-Fi Traveller, Paranoia and Star Trek role-playing game. Still never played Paranoia, but the idea intrigues me. I would love to get some games of Paranoia in. This also looks quite interesting. Anyone played this? This is looks like a game book where all of the clues are hidden in the pictures. It sounds quite fun. And I had a look at some of the pictures on Google, and they do look very interesting. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays. Here's a fairy tale. Very definitely a fairy tale. Feels a bit at odds being in here. I guess it's got a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek kind of satirical edge to it, which fits with White Dwarf's content at the time. But yeah, very much a fairy story. It's not bad. It's not badly written. It's a bit odd. That's all. Thrud the Destroyer has got some associates that are not the A-Team, not Red Sonja, not Conan, and some kind of were-rat creature that will accompany him on his quest. You remember that he's going to avenge the destruction of a sort of semi-Mongolian village. Well, I'm sure we'll get to the destruction of the village ever so soon. This is three articles or 3 pages on the lead up to it, so I hope it's an epic quest. This is an interesting traveller adventure where the crew are tasked with delivering a very important box with mysterious contents to a particular location, and the box becomes more and more mysterious as events unfold. There's obligatory murders and disappearances and strange noises and emissions of smoke from the box. And in the end we discover that, spoiler alert, turn your ears off if you're going to play this adventure, in the end we discover that the whole thing has been an elaborate hoax hosted by a hidden camera company, and the players are of course the butt of the joke and have been watched all the way along by Jeremy Beadle kind of character who goes ha ha and pops his head up at the end with a witty punchline. This is interesting. Why rules and role-playing don't mix. I think we've covered this before, this sort of over-reliance on rules and the kind of power gaming culture, how it defeats the point of group storytelling, and how there are different rule sets and books which approach it from different angles. But this draws the conclusion that I have come to as well, which is that ultimately it's down to how you lead it. You can take a very rules heavy game, and if you've got a GM who's very good at telling the story, it doesn't have to be just rules heavy. The rules don't have to feel like the entirety of the game. But also if you've got a very rules light game, that also doesn't mean that it's a bad game. It just means that you have to do a bit more improvisation on the spot. Here's an AD&D adventure with this rather lovely front piece here. It does a really big build-up. It tells a really in-depth story about how various colonies on these islands came to be, and then the majority of the story doesn't seem to really reference any of that. It seems like a very straightforward dungeon adventure by the time you get to the point, and the idea is really kill as many monsters as you can, which is a bit of a shame because I feel like with the setup they could have done something a little bit more interesting with it, but I guess an inventive DM could use it as a sandbox and come up with some more interesting ideas. Here's some runes for Rune Quest. The petty dwarves from Tolkien get some insertion into AD&D. It's an interesting take. Characters' names and their various attributes from Tolkien. I'm not quite sure that this is how I'd ever really imagined the petty dwarfs to look. They're sort of more kind of gnomish, goblin-y looking creatures, but yeah, it's a fun to see an interesting take on it. A bunch of exotic and myriad weapons from somebody who's obviously very keen on their on their weapons and think that they should all get a set of different rules for each. How to paint horses. Interesting, because I painted horses for last month's Odds and Sods challenge, and I was referencing, I don't know if I can find it now, I had it here this morning but I cleared it away. No, anyway, I was referencing the Foundry guide to painting horses, and it's very much the same as this. This is actually a very useful article. I say actually as if it's a surprise. This is a very useful article detailing the various colorations of horses and what's typical with regards to mane and socks and hooves and all the rest of it. So if you want to paint realistic horses for your fantasy, this is quite a good guide for doing so, and there's a good selection of examples. I'm always intrigued by people who are able to paint dapple grey. Whenever I've tried painted dapple grey, it always looks either really spotty or a bit like sort of fried eggs have been thrown on the surface. So nice to see the dapple grey done properly, and maybe I should take some more lessons on how to do it. There's also an example of a less naturalistic horse with this Wraith Rider here, and some more kind of Cthulhu pulpy detectives. Nothing really we haven't seen before in these pages. And then we're back to the back. So there you go, a fairly brief overview this month of White Dwarfs from 1985 and 1995. If you have enjoyed and you'd like to see more, like, comment below, hit subscribe, hit the notifications button to be notified on when we've got new videos. I try and do one of these every month. And I hope you join me for the June editions as we head towards a couple of issues that I'm really excited about at some point in the future. But we're going to be getting more Warhammer Quest articles, so that's exciting. I'm excited about that. Yeah, alright, well thank you very much for joining me. Take care, and I shall see you again soon.